If I were serious about changing my financial future, the very first move would be brutal honesty with myself. Not optimism, not motivation, an audit. The kind of audit an investor would run on a failing company, except the company is my own life. Most people never do this because it's uncomfortable to look at where your time actually goes, not where you wish it went. It's uncomfortable to admit that the job you complain about is the same job you refuse to leave, or that the habits you defend are the ones quietly keeping you broke. I'd start by tracking my time with precision. Every hour has a job, whether I assign it one or not. I'd look at how much of my day is spent producing versus consuming. Scrolling, gossip, low-stakes entertainment, and pointless meetings would be treated like financial leaks. Because that's exactly what they are. If my calendar doesn't reflect my goals, then my goals are just fantasies. Time is the first currency, and most people are bankrupt without realizing it. Next, I'd audit my income with the same level of objectivity. Fully. Where does my money come from? And how dependent am I on a single source? If one paycheck disappearing would cause panic, that's not security, that's fragility. I'd ask whether my income is tied to my presence or to systems that work without me. If I stop showing up, does the money stop too? That question alone tells you how far you are from freedom. Then, I'd examine what I'm tolerating. Low standards are expensive. Staying in environments that drain energy, reward mediocrity, or punish ambition comes with a cost, even if it doesn't show up on a bank statement. I look at the conversations I'm part of, the expectations around me, and the stories I repeat to justify staying comfortable. Tolerance of nonsense is often disguised as loyalty, patience, or being irrealistic, but in reality, it's fear wearing better PR. People would be part of this audit, too. Not in a judgmental way, but in a strategic one. Who pushes me to think bigger? Who normalizes stagnation? Who is building, investing, learning, and taking risks? And who is endlessly talking about it? You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your environment. If everyone around me is optimizing for comfort, I will too, no matter how ambitious I claim to be. I'd also audit what I'm learning. Information diets matter. Am I consuming content that sharpens my thinking and expands my opportunities, or content that keeps me emotionally engaged but strategically stuck? Being informed isn't the same as being prepared. I'd prioritize learning that leads to action. Skills, frameworks, case studies, and real numbers. Entertainment disguised as education would be cut ruthlessly. Finally, I'd look at the stories I tell myself about money, work, and success. Every behavior is downstream from a belief. If I believe wealthy people are lucky, unethical, or different from me, I'll subconsciously sabotage any progress. If I believe hard things are to be avoided, I'll quit right before momentum builds. An audit isn't just external, it's internal. Until I take full ownership of where I am without blaming the economy, my boss, my upbringing, or my circumstances, nothing changes. Ownership is the line between people who stay stuck and people who actually move forward. Before I touched a business idea, an investment, or a plan to make more money, I'd rebuild how I think. Because strategy without the right mindset is just busy work that collapses under pressure. Most people don't fail because they lack information. They fail because their default thinking is wired for safety, approval, and short-term comfort. And those settings are incompatible with building real wealth. I'd start by redefining risk. Most people think risk means losing money. In reality, the bigger risk is staying in a situation that caps your upside. A stable paycheck that never meaningfully grows. A role where your effort has no ownership attached to it. Or a life where your income is permanently tied to your hours is far riskier over a decade than trying something uncertain for a year. I'd train myself to see stagnation as dangerous and experimentation as necessary. Then I'd reframe failure. Failure isn't a signal to stop, it's data. Every loss, rejection, or mistake contains information that makes the next decision sharper. People who win aren't immune to failure, they just don't personalize it. I detach my identity from outcomes and attach it to execution. If something didn't work, the question wouldn't be what's wrong with me, but what did this teach me that I can use immediately? I'd also change how I relate to discomfort. Discomfort isn't a warning sign. It's usually a growth indicator. The first sales call, the first negotiation, the first time asking for capital or raising prices. All of it feels awkward. Most people retreat at that moment and then call it intuition. It's not intuition. It's avoidance. I'd train myself to stay in the discomfort long enough to build competence. Confidence comes after action, not before it. Another critical shift would be moving from a consumer mindset to an owner mindset. Consumers ask, what do I get? Owners ask, how does this work? I'd stop passively accepting rules and start questioning systems. Why is this priced this way? Who makes money here? Where's the leverage? Ownership begins in the mind, long before it shows up on paper. Once you start thinking like an owner, opportunities that were invisible become obvious. I'd also let go of the need for certainty. Certainty is comforting, but it's expensive. Waiting until everything is clear usually means waiting forever. High performers learn to make decisions with incomplete information and adjust quickly. I'd focus on speed of learning, not perfection of planning. Momentum favors people who move, test, and refine in real time. Finally, I'd shift how I measure progress. Instead of asking whether something feels good or looks impressive, I'd ask whether it builds skill, leverage, or optionality. I'd reward myself for showing up, making the call, shipping the work, and having the hard conversation, even if the outcome isn't ideal yet. Mindset isn't positive thinking. It's disciplined thinking. And once your internal rules change, your external results have no choice but to follow. If the goal is to make real money, fast enough to matter and stable enough to last, I wouldn't chase excitement. I'd chase cash flow. Chase cash flow? The biggest mistake people make is assuming wealth comes from novelty, when in reality it comes from repetition. Boring businesses win because they solve boring problems that never go away. People will always need places to live, things to be cleaned, systems to be fixed, services to be delivered, and processes to be managed. That predictability is an advantage, not a drawback. I'd start by looking where others aren't. Industries with low social media presence, outdated websites, and owners nearing retirement are often packed with opportunity. These businesses aren't failing. They're ignored. Many already have customers, revenue, and processes in place, but lack modern systems, marketing, or operational discipline. Instead of asking, what's the next big idea? I'd ask, what already works that I can make better? I wouldn't try to build everything from scratch if I didn't have to. Buying or partnering into an existing business compresses time. You skip the hardest phase, finding product market fit, and move straight into optimization. That means improving pricing, tightening operations, upgrading sales, or expanding distribution. Small changes in boring businesses can produce outsized returns because the foundation is already there. I'd also focus on businesses with simple economics. Revenue that's easy to understand. Costs that are predictable. Demand that isn't dependent on trends or platforms I don't control. Complexity is a hidden tax. The more moving parts, the more things it can break. Boring businesses tend to be resilient because they're built on fundamentals, not hype. Then there's competition, or the lack of it. Flashy industries attract crowds. Boring ones repel them. That creates pricing power for operators who show up professionally. If everyone else is disorganized, slow to respond, and inconsistent, being reliable becomes a competitive advantage. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be the most dependable. Consistency compounds faster than creativity. I'd pay close attention to margins and scalability. A business doesn't need to be massive to be meaningful, but it does need to leave room to grow. Can I add locations, increase average customer value, introduce recurring revenue, or systemize delivery? Even modest improvements, applied consistently, can turn a small operation into a serious income engine. Most importantly, I'd ignore ego. Boring businesses don't come with applause. No one claps when you buy a plumbing company, a bookkeeping firm, or a logistics operation, but applause doesn't pay dividends. Cash flow does. Wealth is built quietly, long before it's visible. I'd remind myself that boring doesn't mean easy. It means proven. These businesses still require leadership, discipline, and smart decision-making, but they reward those traits with stability and leverage. While others are chasing the next trend, I'd be building something durable, predictable, and valuable. That's how real money is made, by doing what works, even when it's not exciting. If I wanted leverage, I wouldn't try to be good at everything. I'd pick one skill that directly moves money and commit to mastering it. Not a soft skill that feels productive, but a hard, measurable skill that creates revenue on demand, sales, negotiation, deal structuring, distribution. The kind of skill where, if you get better, the numbers have no choice but to follow. Most people stay broke, not because they're lazy, but because they spread their effort across too many things that don't pay. I'd start by choosing the skill closest to cash. The faster a skill connects to revenue, the more valuable it becomes. Sales is the obvious example. If you can sell, you're never stuck. You can sell a product, a service, an idea, or yourself. Negotiation is another. The ability to ask, anchor, and close changes the outcome of deals, salaries, partnerships, and acquisitions. Distribution matters too. Knowing how to get attention, traffic, or eyeballs gives you leverage over people who only know how to build quietly and hope to be discovered. Once I chose the skill, I'd treat it like a profession, not a side interest. That means studying the best, not the most popular. I'd look for people with real results and reverse engineer how they think, speak, and act. I'd practice deliberately, not casually, role-playing conversations, reviewing calls, tracking numbers. Improvement doesn't come from repetition alone. It comes from feedback. I'd also put myself in environments where performance is unavoidable. Skills don't grow in isolation. They grow under pressure. That might mean taking a role where commission matters, negotiating real deals with real consequences, or being responsible for outcomes instead of tasks. Comfort slows learning. Stakes accelerated. Another key shift would be moving from theory to application as fast as possible. Reading and watching can create the illusion of progress, but skill is built in the doing. I'd prioritize action even when it's messy. Awkward first attempts are the entry fee. The goal isn't to look good, it's to get better. Every conversation, every pitch, every negotiation becomes a data point. I'd also understand that one great skill can unlock many opportunities. A strong salesperson can step into almost any industry. A sharp negotiator can improve any deal. A great distributor can turn average products into winners. Skills like these compound because they transfer. They don't expire when the market shifts. They become more valuable. As competence grows, I'd increase the stakes. Higher value deals. Bigger numbers. More responsibility. This is where income scales. Most people cap themselves by staying in low-risk, low-reward environments. Mastery demands progressive challenge. Finally, I'd build my identity around being excellent at this one thing. Not in an ego-driven way, but in a disciplined one. When people know you as someone who can close, negotiate, or distribute, opportunities start finding you. One skill, sharpened relentlessly, creates leverage that no credential or title ever could. If I were intentional about accelerating wealth, I wouldn't treat visibility as optional. I'd treat it as leverage. A personal brand isn't about being famous or loud. It's about being known for something specific and trusted for it. In a world where attention is fragmented, clarity wins. I'd decide what problem I solve, who I solve it for, and why my perspective is worth listening to. Then I'd communicate that consistently. I'd start by documenting instead of performing. Most people wait until they feel like an expert before they share anything. That delay costs them years of compounding trust. I'd share what I'm learning in real time, what I'm building, what's working, and what's not. Not polished highlight reels, but honest insights. Credibility doesn't come from perfection. It comes from pattern recognition over time. When people see you thinking clearly and acting consistently, trust follows. I'd be strategic about platforms. I wouldn't try to be everywhere. I'd choose one or two channels where my audience already pays attention and go deep instead of wide. Consistency matters more than virality. One thoughtful post a week for years beats a month of noise followed by silence. The goal isn't quick attention. It's durable reputation. I'd also understand that a strong personal brand reduces friction. When people know who you are and what you stand for, conversations move faster. Deals close quicker. Opportunities come inbound instead of always being chased. Trust pre-sells before you ever get on a call. That trust is an asset, and like any asset, it grows with use and deteriorates with neglect. Another critical piece would be point of view. Simply repeating common advice doesn't build authority. I develop opinions based on experience, data, and observation. I'd explain not just what I believe, but why. Clear thinking attracts serious people. Vagueness attracts everyone else. I'd be willing to say things that are true, even if they're unpopular, without being reckless or performative. I'd also connect my brain directly to action. Content without execution is just commentary. I'd show proof of work. Businesses built, deals done, lessons learned. Not to impress, but to demonstrate competence. This creates a feedback loop where visibility leads to opportunity, opportunity leads to results, and results strengthen visibility. Importantly, I'd treat my audience like peers, not spectators, not spectators. Community isn't built by broadcasting, it's built by engagement. I'd respond, ask questions, and spotlight others doing good work. People support what they feel part of. Over time, that community becomes a powerful network, one that shares deals, knowledge, and momentum. I'd remind myself that personal branding is a long game. The early stages feel slow and unrewarding. There are no instant payoffs, just quiet consistency. But over time, the compounding effect becomes undeniable. The right people start paying attention. The right doors start opening. Doors start opening. Visibility, when built with intention and integrity, turns trust into opportunity and opportunity into leverage. If I wanted to move faster than my current environment would allow, I'd stop trying to do it alone. Independence sounds noble, but isolation is expensive. Progress accelerates when you're surrounded by people who are already doing what you're trying to do. Not people who talk about it, but people who are in it, making decisions, taking hits, solving real problems. Proximity changes your standards before it changes your strategy. I'd start by being honest about who currently influences me the most. Not who I admire online, but whose opinions I actually listen to. If the loudest voices in my life are risk-averse, cynical, or stuck in survival mode, that mindset will quietly shape my decisions. Environment always wins. That's why talented people plateau and average people outperform. One is surrounded by comfort, the other by expectation. I'd intentionally seek rooms where I feel behind, where conversations stretch my thinking and expose my blind spots. Discomfort in those spaces is a signal that I'm learning. When everyone around you thinks bigger, moves faster, and expects more, your internal baseline shifts. What once felt unrealistic becomes normal. What once felt risky becomes routine. Mentorship would be a priority, not a luxury. I wouldn't look for mentors to motivate me. I'd look for mentors who challenge my assumptions. People who have pattern recognition from years of experience and can compress decades of mistakes into a few conversations. I'd respect their time by showing up prepared, executing on feedback, and reporting back with results. The fastest way to lose access to great mentors is to ignore their advice. I'd also understand that access often requires investment. Sometimes that's money. Sometimes it's effort, contribution, or consistency. Free advice is everywhere, but it's rarely tailored. Paying for proximity, through communities, masterminds, or partnerships, creates accountability and alignment. Quote. When you have skin in the game, you take the game seriously. Community matters just as much as individual mentorship. Entrepreneurship and wealth building can be isolating, especially when your path doesn't match traditional timelines. Being around people who normalize uncertainty, risk, and delayed gratification keeps you steady when progress feels slow. Community provides perspective. Someone else's breakthrough reminds you that momentum is possible. Someone else's failure reminds you that setbacks are survivable. I'd also be intentional about contribution. The strongest networks aren't built by asking, but by adding value. Sharing insights, making introductions, offering help without immediate expectation. Reputation compounds. People remember who shows up prepared, follows through, and plays long-term games at B. Opportunity flows toward those who are useful and reliable. Over time, these relationships become force multipliers. Deals surface that never hit the market. Lessons are learned secondhand instead of firsthand. Mistakes are avoided because someone else already paid for them. This is how progress accelerates quietly. It doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but internally everything moves faster. Trying to win alone is the slowest path. The right people sharpen your thinking, raise your standards, and hold you to a version of yourself you might not yet see. Proximity doesn't just change what you know. It changes what you believe is possible, and belief drives action long before results ever show up. And that's the part most people miss. Wealth isn't built by one bold move or a single smart idea. It's built by stacking these decisions daily, even when no one is watching and nothing feels urgent yet. The people who win aren't the loudest or the luckiest. They're the ones who chose ownership over comfort, leverage over ego, and long-term momentum over short-term approval. If I wanted to become a millionaire in 2026, I wouldn't wait for permission or clarity. I'd start moving, adjusting, and compounding, step by step, until the outcome became unavoidable.